Welcome to Thinking Deeply About Primary Education, the podcast that makes time and space to think about pedagogy, teaching and learning, professional development, anything of interest to time-poor but enthusiasm-rich primary teachers. This week, I'm joined by Dr. Kirsten Fenton and Holly Drummond. It's fantastic to have you guys here. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting us.
How are things? All good?
We're all good, yeah. We just started our half term up in Scotland, so we're looking forward to 2 weeks off, but nothing says a holiday like doing a podcast.
Don't rub it in, because lots of listeners will still have quite a while to go. Kirsten, Holly, you've spoken at 2 of our 3 TDAPA conferences this year, but some of our listeners may not have had a chance to become familiar with your work. So I thought we'd begin with a little bit about who you are and how you got here today.
So we're both primary practitioners in Scotland who have taught together and are now not in the same school, but have continued to work together, bringing in a journaling approach to maths teaching in primary schools. A bit of a passion project for ourselves, based off sort of our own reading and research and our own interests within primary education.
Certainly, it seems to have gone down really well at the 2 sessions you've done. And so I thought, it'd be fantastic to chat more about it with you guys and to really get under the skin of it, because I do think it's something that can be really powerful in the mathematics classroom. So I think probably begin with the rationale. Why do you believe mathematical journaling really matters?
So I think if we think about the picture across the Scottish landscape in terms of maths attainment data, attainment trends obviously on the way down, people not having a sound knowledge and understanding of maths throughout their whole lifetimes. There's a lot of maths anxiety. So the current research is telling us that children as young as 6 are concerned or worried about how they feel about maths. And that, goes into a lot of lack of confidence when you're thinking about the future. I think that was something that Holly and I picked up in our own classrooms as well, definitely with the children that we were working with. When we asked them to describe how they felt about maths in one word, they would often say things like they were worried about it, it was boring, it made them feel nervous, exhausted. And we were really keen to try and buck that trend and turn that mindset around and try and develop confident and capable learners who actually enjoyed maths. So that's a bit about why we started thinking about it. And obviously we've done quite a lot of research on it, spoken to a lot of people about it. We've tried various things in our own classroom as well. We're still continually tweaking how we approach mathematical journaling to get the best out of it. I think one of the big things we would think about is lack of talk, and I think that's particularly true in Scotland as a whole. I know in England it's a lot more developed in terms of RSE and the RSE programmes and the progression within there, but definitely in Scotland there was definitely a deficit in terms of the vocabulary our children are using. And that's not to say that's not part of our curriculum for excellence. Listening and talking is a key element of that, but it's just not developed. It's definitely not seen in areas such as maths.
Absolutely. And I think for us, one of the areas of concern, is that sense of self that our children have, and building that sense of identity from an early age. And that mathematical identity is often very fragile. They'll describe themselves as either being good or not good at maths from a very young age. And that sort of feeling that it's somehow innate to some people and not to others was something that we found quite concerning. And just seeing that trend in children, that even by sort of middle of primary school, they'd be able to pick out peers who were somehow better at the subject than them. And we wanted to shift that sense of mindset within our classrooms, that all children could feel capable and therefore feel competent and make progress in their learning. And it wasn't something that you're just either you are or you aren't. And so that's sort of why we feel it matters, because we're wanting to have that mentality that yes, learning is hard. Yes, we struggle, but that is part of the process. And actually, with the right environment, with the right opportunities, and with the right instruction and teaching, we can all make progress in our learning, whether it's in a subject that we really enjoy or a subject that perhaps has seemed sort of out of reach for some children before. So that led us to sort of rethinking how we were delivering our maths lessons and trying to think of a slightly different approach, so that we had that sort of common goal within the classroom. And as Kirsten's saying, that real importance of building that classroom culture of talk, so that everybody's voice mattered, not just the ones that were able to put their hand up quickest or show their whiteboard with the right answer and have that sort of sense of, oh, it's right. We wanted to build that sense of everybody's voice matters. Tell me why you think that. Show me how you know, and building that learning community within our classrooms. So that's really our sort of rationale behind trying to take it in a slightly different direction. And we're obviously aware that maths journaling is coming through. There's quite a lot of conversations around, it's not necessarily something brand new, and quite a lot of the sort of big schemes are beginning to integrate things. But we feel our approach sort of doesn't just look at a sort of reflective model, it's built into the instruction. It is part of the learning within the classroom.
I think we'd see it more as a sort of pedagogy.
Yeah.
So it's how we teach and what we're teaching rather than an add-on. We're really keen to see that it's not an add-on. We're not creating extra work for practitioners
Definitely
at all. So it's very much incorporated into what we're trying to get across and what we're trying to get the children to know and understand.
And I think from that, it's that sense that the children understand themselves better as learners then, that they have skills that are within the maths classroom from journaling, but actually that metacognition, that understanding what makes sense to them and how they make meaning, is transferable to other areas of the curriculum as well. So really looking holistically at how we're building competent and capable learners within our own classrooms. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge because, you know, when we think about the confidence, when we think about pupils identifying as mathematicians, you know, we know that can be a vicious cycle.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think it also feeds into practitioners as well. You still get practitioners who are not comfortable at teaching maths. And I know just personally as well, that was always an area of the curriculum that was like, that's the one I'm going to have to really focus on to make sure I'm resourced properly, to make sure I have a key conceptual understanding of what I want the children to know and what I'm teaching. But I think maths anxiety starts very early, but stretches all the way up into adulthood. So I think we need to have an understanding of that as well to sort of break that mindset that we've just been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, actually, last week's episode of the podcast was about mathematical talk. So, you know, in my head, I was probably aligning those two things and thinking, you know, we can, you know, it's about communication and different ways of expressing ourselves as mathematicians. If you enjoy the conversations on this podcast, you'll love Hey What You Reading For, our weekly newsletter where we explore the ideas shaping education right now. Each edition brings you research, reflection, and recommendations to challenge your thinking and sharpen your practice. You can sign up for free at thinkingdeeply.info. What does effective maths journaling look like in practice? So you've already said it's not a bolt-on, which, you know, I'm 100% behind. You know, we do things and they're part of our very being as teachers, you know, because when we start tacking on metacognition and things together, they don't really get done unless someone's observing us. What's your approach? And obviously what we'll try and do is we'll try and have some pictures, I think, on like LinkedIn underneath the episode so we can see at the same time as people are listening.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think we started with a conceptual framework, if you like. So we took a specific mathematical chunk, if you like. So if we're looking at addition or looking at subtraction, we would bear that to the start. We would start very often with a brain dump, which we would model and scaffold very clearly with the children to start with. So that would include what key vocabulary they would know. Could they give us a worked example? Have they any top tips? So if they were teaching that, what would they want to say to somebody about that particular concept? Is there a real life context? So how would they apply that in the big bad world out there? Could they think of a way that would be applicable? So we've sort of modelled and scaffolded that quite carefully to start with, but then we've been really impressed by the sophistication and the fastness, for want of a better, the quality of it increases really quickly over time in terms of what the children are producing. So that's how we would sort of start. I think we've both taken that conceptual framework, if you like, and then thought, well, what do we need the children to know? What are the key parts? What are the key concepts, the key strategies, the key procedures, the key vocabulary that we'd like our children to know about addition or fractions or whatever it is that you're teaching? And those have given us moments for journaling. So there might be stop and jot bits within our learning where we're like, this is something that we want you to know. Can you record that? But we've been very much the case that's not, it doesn't need to be written. It can be pictures, it can be doodles. We've had some great cartoons thrown in there as well. Whatever makes sense to the children as learners, as long as they are retaining and able to retrieve that key information. Within that as well, we would probably have lots of practice because children absolutely do need practice. We are not averse to worksheets. We are not averse to textbooks at all. There will be a more sort of procedural or clarity of our layout in terms of what we're teaching, and that would be our direct instruction. Towards the end of that cycle, we would want to have a post-assessment or assessment as well. So that would really kind of think about real-world context. So there we might play about a little bit. So we might get them to design a Halloween party. We might get them to do some travel. So they're bringing in those budgetary skills, those monetary skills, but they're also seeing how to apply those strategies within a wider context that makes it real and it makes them meaningful for them. So it's about learning with a purpose towards the end of that, because we're quite keen that it has to make sense to them. They're still very little in primary skills, so we need to make sure we've got that creativity, that play, that engagement, and that joy in their learning within it as well.
Absolutely.
I
think within that initial phase where they're brain dumping, though, that allows us that pre-assessment of their learning. That's their retrieval practice time where they're thinking back to previous years of learning, or when we've revisited it earlier in our own school year. But we can pick up on misconceptions and we can adapt our teaching. Our teaching is responsive to the children we have in front of us for that year. So we need to be looking at what do we need to cover for them? Where are the gaps in their understanding, and adapting what our direct instruction is in order to try and close some of that. I think also of key importance in our classrooms are the real sense of talk, as we were talking about, but we use STEM sentences and sentence stems to scaffold their discussions with one another, but also within their journal entries themselves. So that they're using vocabulary in the correct context, they've got the meaning of those words, it's sense making really for them, and it's that real sense of disciplinary literacy. There's a particular way to talk about maths, there's a particular way to write about maths, there are diagrams, there's equations, there's symbols, and all of that needs to make sense to the child, because that can be a real unknown. We have an EAL learner who we reference frequently because he talked about it being a secret language, and that actually through journaling he's now able to understand the secret language of maths. And it is something we don't necessarily see when we do see maths all around us, but the way we talk about it and the language we're using is quite unique to the subject. So we need to make sure we're explicitly teaching that.
But I think as well it's that consistency of language and making sure that you use the correct terminology right from when they're very small, so that they're not, there's been instances when I've seen workbooks talking about sorting diagrams, and then later on it would be a Venn diagram. Why not just call it a Venn diagram from the very start? Because that's kind of helps with misconceptions, or helps children not understand and be confused and be puzzled about it. So I think we're quite kind of key advocates of making sure that we're using the correct disciplinary literacy from the very start. So in our eyes, that would be from nursery onwards.
Absolutely. And I think for us, it's that sense of, we want to have high expectations of our children, but that's not about making the work hard for them. When we're talking about high expectations, we're talking about what they're capable of. And children, very young children, can grasp very complex vocabulary in the right context when it has meaning for them, and when they can attribute the correct symbol or representation to that. The example we talk about is that, the amount of 4 and 5 year olds that can reel off dinosaur names, and that because they know exactly which one to identify because they've made those connections, that we need to do the same within our teaching. We need to assume that they are capable of being able to learn and use the correct terminology from a very, very young age, and not, dilute it or even sort of misterm things so that they then have to unlearn it and relearn it again later, and realign their thinking. Start from when they're young and follow that through, and have that consistency throughout your the primary school education, nursery and primary school, and you'll feel that their own talk is much more elaborate. They're able to question one another much more skillfully by the time they're that little bit older, because it has been modeled. You're using the correct language, you're sharing that with them, and you're celebrating that in the classroom. You're encouraging them in their talk and celebrating each other and picking out examples when you hear it, and they have that sort of community learning within the room as well.
I think what's really clear as well is the visibility of the children's thinking, and there's a real sort of evidence of the progress that they're making. So, and that's not only just visible to them, it's if they're sharing their work with their peers, they're able to see it. A really nice example is that kind of initial brain dump, and if you compare it, if you did another brain dump at the end, or you did the assessment at the end, just so the children can actually look and see, well, gosh, look how much you've learned, look how much you can talk about addition now that you couldn't at the very beginning. And that's real kind of confidence booster. It shows them that they can do it. It ties into all that work on growth mindset. It was hard, but I struggled, but now I can see it. So not only does that give the children a boost as learners, but even as a practitioner, it gives you a nice boost as well, because you're able to say, oh, look, I have actually taught you something. I'm quite kind of successful in what I'm pushing forward here. So I think that's a really a nice thing about journaling as well. It sort of ties in that visibility of your thinking, but it's also done it in a really kind of creative way as well. And as Holly says, that inclusivity is so important to what we're promoting as well.
And I think ultimately for us, it's that ownership, that their jotters are unique to them. Yes, there are practice pages, as we're saying, with setting out procedures and with work marked correctly or incorrectly, but within that is that real ownership of their own journey. And we know that we all work better when we feel we have control over something and it feels that it's within, we have ownership of it. And that agency really comes through, that their jotters are personal, that they don't look exactly the same, and that they're able to make sense and make meaning for themselves. So it's the real sort of story of their thinking within that jotter space. We've often asked if they have two separate jotters or how that all works, but it's keeping it all together because they need to see that the talking and the writing is completely linked in with their learning about maths. It is all part of that whole process. And so we keep it all together so that they have that story in one place together.
I mean, it sounds awesome. I mean, so almost it's like when in Japanese board work, you have the whole story of the sequence being told on the board, but this is the pupil's own personal story, and they're going back to that regularly, but also you've got that almost like after you've learned everything, how much of that can you almost like self-elaborate at the end? Is that, if I interpret it correctly?
Yeah.
And that gives a really nice point as well for reflection as well. So you might often get them to do stem sentences there about, I found this difficult, or I need to remember next time we do this, I need to remember to carry that across, or, you know, whatever it is to do. But that also feeds into that whole, oh, I can do it, that growth mindset, really kind of pushing that forward as well as that with language.
Definitely.
I mean, it makes so much sense because, you know, because we're like, whenever we're looking at really young children and the marks they make, you know, it's basically just a continuation of that, isn't it? Those marks have to make sense to them. The numerals that we've assigned, you know, there's a time and a place for them, but presumably that's true of all the complex things. You know, how I represent multiplication might be different to the formal.
And I think that's really important, isn't it? I think one of the key things that we've learned when we've been teaching in this way is that we're not so much interested in the right answer, although obviously that helps, but it's how the children get there. So what strategy are you doing? So, oh, look, Holly, you did it differently to Kirsten, or Kirsten, you did it differently to Holly, but you both got to the same result. So how does that work? So it's really getting them to show us what they're thinking.
Definitely. And I think it gives you that much deeper understanding of the learners you have in front of you. So rather than just assuming that they can't calculate or that they're getting the answers wrong, and therefore you need to reteach the strategy again, when you're hearing them articulate the process they've gone through or what their thinking was, you're actually able to hone right in on the part that perhaps is a misconception, or perhaps there is a gap in their learning, or that they have maybe relied on process over the understanding of what they're doing. And that real sense of who the children are that you have in front of you, and then being able to adapt and respond appropriately. It is a much deeper understanding of the children you have.
I think you're right, because I think that changes your classroom culture as well, because so many children will just say, oh, I just know the answer. They've just got it in their heads. But we were sort of trying to pick that, well, how do you know? You must have done something, so can you tell me and can you explain and show me what you know, rather than just coming up with the answer. And it does take a little bit of time for them to get used to that way of thinking, but I think the results are fantastic in terms of the confidence and their ability to really deepen their thinking and their understanding of the concepts they're thinking about.
Yeah, because that's the thing. So many children will see mental mathematics as something to be done in the head. And I've seen my own children at different times attempt to do whole test papers in their heads. I'm like, you can make notes, but like as teacher, you know, we want to get as much information about our class as possible, because then that determines what we do next with them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so having this sort of structured sort of system in place for grabbing that attention, you know, it sounds fantastic. So does I want to see it in action.
Yeah,
so we have to. If you guys can put, I'll do the Saturday morning post at 9:00, and you guys can throw some images, or a link to, if you've got a website or anything out there, we can stick in, because I know other teachers are going to really be really interested, because you know it just makes so much sense. It's ticking all the boxes. You know, when you think about mathematics, when you think about teaching, it's hitting all the key markers. You know, from moving children from where they are and what makes sense to them now to what we want to make sense. So, I think, you know, very, very exciting stuff. If you're listening to this podcast, you already care about great maths teaching. Now, the Story of Mathematics is a complete primary curriculum designed by teachers for teachers. It connects representation, reasoning, and proof so that every lesson builds true understanding, not just performance. Professional development is built in,
helping teachers grow in confidence as students grow in proficiency. And you can find out more, book a short tour at alta-education.com/TSOM-overview.
Some teachers might worry that maths journals become writing tasks rather than mathematical ones. How can we ensure that journaling deepens mathematical understanding rather than distracting from it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think again we're really key to make sure it's not an add-on. It's very much a method of teaching and learning, and it's very much integrated into our whole pedagogical approach. We're not looking for beautiful prose presented neatly. We're not looking for paragraphs. We're not looking for diary-style entries. We're looking for mathematical sense making. So again, it goes back to that mark making that you were just talking about. So that can be diagrams, that can be doodles, that can be drawings. Absolutely not lengthy prose. Where we've got prose in there, we've very much got stem sentences, so we've very much scaffolded and modelled what we want the children to include in that. I think we have to remember that maths is a language in its own right, and I think by incorporating writing into maths, it helps build those habits of metacognition that we're so keen to improve. And I think both for Holly and I, the physical act of writing that down is really key to the philosophy that we're pushing. We really feel quite strongly about that. I know there is a lot of research just now about screen time and how that doesn't activate certain parts of their brain, but the physical act of writing does. And we're really keen to push that forward because we think it's so important to how children learn and how to get the best out of children and how to make sure that they've got those long-term memories and they're able to recall and retrieve what we've taught them and what they're learning. So I think, yeah, we're quite advocates about that, aren't we? About making sure it is written.
And ultimately, writing their calculations and writing numbers, just as you're saying, is a form of writing in itself. So while we're talking about, explaining vocabulary or using sentence stems, it's just adding that extra sense making within their own jotter. That the marks that they make, whether they're doodles or diagrams or cartoons, is whatever works for them to be able to hold on to that for that bit longer, or to be able to refer back to have that wee memory aid or that visual representation to then help them in their next steps. And actually what we're noticing just when you're speaking there about, when they're trying to do mental calculations and things, it becomes really habitual. Yeah. And actually when we've then set our children written maths assessments at the end of a term or the end of a unit, the children in our classes have then gone on to elaborate on the page. So rather than just giving us the answer, they're now in the habit of showing their thinking. So we will need to teach them the efficiency and the context, but at primary age, that's okay. We give them, a good amount of time to be able to complete these assessments. That actually that's such more valuable data for us than whether they've just put the right answer. And for them, that's become the habit of how they are learning their maths and how they're showing their learning, that actually it's not time consuming, it's not an additional strain on them. That's just the habit now within that subject as well. And I think we need to see learning as much more connected and not have maths as this distinct. Yes, it has distinct characteristics and features, but we need, especially at primary age, for the children to see that things are connected and that they can apply their skills across the areas of the curriculum as well. So yeah, it's very much not, we don't want it used as a plenary. We don't want, you must write me 4 sentences about such and such. It's not that. It's show me what you know, hold on to this part, explain this, how would you draw a fraction or how would you represent whatever the concept is, that it's not adding in that sort of burden on the teacher. We very much say it's that if you were to say to the children you wanted them to show you an answer on a show me board and show their strategy, well, could they stop and jot? Could they put that into their journal? Is there, yes, take 3 or 4 answers together, and then on the 4th one, right, here's a calculation for you. This time I want you to put it in your journals. I want you to annotate around it how you calculated. What were the steps you took? We're going to hold on to that one because that's the strategy we're working on for today. So it's nothing extra in your teaching. It's all the good things you're doing already and all your questioning skills, but actually now and again going, your journal's right next to you. Let's keep hold of that. Or I really need you to know this. This is going to be really important later on when things perhaps are a little trickier. So let's just take a moment, talk to your partner. Okay, come to a shared understanding. Let's put that all in your jotters. And we get them to share their entries all the time. They're magpieing around the room. They're up and walking about to have a look, to share, to pinch, or to question each other. And actually, because talk is such a part of it, their ability to question one another and really dig down into each other's, their questioning skills are getting as good as ours as teachers by the time, you're 2 or 3 terms in. And that's wonderful to see. And you can take that step back as a teacher and just circulate the room and listen in.
Observe.
And again, the amount of sort of quality of data you're getting from that to then adapt and respond in your teaching is fantastic. So yeah, as much as writing might seem quite strenuous for some of our learners, again, it's back to that real stage of children draw with chalk, they draw with a paintbrush. You know, mark making is something we want to express ourselves, we want to make meaning, we want to communicate, and it's just about having that understanding as teachers of what we're expecting them to produce, and not having that as perhaps rigid or as neat and organized. We say often that learning is messy. We make mistakes. That's absolutely fine. Keep it there. They don't need to rub it out. They can write next to it, this is wrong because, or I miscalculated here, and keep that evidence together to celebrate. And that ties all the way back into that whole identity thing again, that we need to feel confident to make mistakes. We need to feel that we make progress when things are hard and we struggle. And keeping all of that together in that one place in their jotter is, we feel, really, really powerful. Absolutely. For our children. So slightly sort of winding path to get to what you're asking there, Kieran. But
I think it's really important, because I thought, what's the biggest misconception that people might potentially have, and just almost set you up to sort of dismiss it, really? Because, you know, it's like reasoning becoming, I know this because, and that's all that reasoning ever becomes. And I know that's not the truth, but unfortunately, that's how sometimes it manifests. You know? But I love the idea of these children leaving like notes in the margins. I can't remember misremembering. Was it like the Riemann hypothesis was written in the margin of a book, or if what do you call him who wrote the calculus, Newton or Leibniz? I think one of those two were writing in the margins or something. Something, you know. So I've got these pictures of these students in Scotland sort of leaving unsolved equations in the margins of their tests.
You had it with your child who's explaining that all they had to do was draw the radius of a circle to a particular length, but the child in your class then gave us the full definition of what a radius actually was.
And circumference. And, you know, it was like really
I know this is the radius because...
Taking that a bit too far in my teaching.
Fantastic. I mean, what I'd really like to do is to explain what 6-7 means, because
absolutely,
you've done a really bad job of. I'm aware this phenomenon exists, but my own kids are like, "Oh, I don't." So maybe that's the next big unproven thing.
We talk a lot in this show about using artificial intelligence purposefully. Now, if you want one place each week that helps you to do exactly that, try Teacher Prompts by Neil Almond. You get a clear briefing of what's changed in artificial intelligence, why it matters for schools, and a prompt you can test in your planning with our CPD. Tone is evidence-informed and pragmatic, with explainers like study mode, O3, and ages that make sense for classroom realities. It's free and it respects your time. Subscribe at news.teacherprompts.ai.
What advice would you give to a teacher who wants to introduce or improve maths journaling tomorrow or Monday mornings when they go back into the classroom?
I think be brave.
Yeah,
definitely. Take the step, and even if it's just a small step, start with the talk, or start with a brain dump, and just see where your children are. And it can feel really strange. It can feel strange for practitioners. It can feel strange for the children. It's not how you would traditionally approach a maths lesson. But I think the thing about journaling is the results are very quick to make their appearance. And I think the confidence that children have very quickly makes its appearance as well. So I know it feels strange, but I would just encourage, just try it and see what happens. And we're always happy to chat and happy to talk further if anybody wants to get in touch and talk. We can absolutely talk people through what we've come across and things that work for us. But I think just having the confidence to take that first initial step. So yeah, try the oracy, try a little STEM sentence, try a little reflection, and just see where it takes you. Because I think, as Holly was saying, you'll get so much more out of your children in terms of understanding them and understanding where they are, and real kind of data-rich environment, and making that shift in your classroom culture has huge benefits for everybody. I think it's one of the most satisfying things we've done as practitioners.
Absolutely. And I think, trying to take other people on board with us in our current settings, Kirsten at Erskine Stewart Mubble and myself up in Inverness at Lochardle Primary, it's just that sense of giving it a go. Be, as Kirsten's saying, be brave, but start small. Start with, do you agree or disagree with a statement, and prove it. start with something that the children are used to doing, but get them to write it down or get them on, big flip chart paper. And it's the things that people are already doing, that it's not something wild and crazy and different, but it's just using it differently or recording it slightly differently. So we'd definitely say just that courage to have a go. We feel there's no detrimental impact. So they're still learning their maths, we're still teaching their strategies. It's almost the opposite, that then that door that it opens for them is huge. They're able to access their learning at a completely different level than they were before. The ability to articulate their thinking is, we feel, the main benefit. And that, from feedback from colleagues and parents as well, that's the part that the children really sort of show off with. They like using big words. Children feel confident when they can use and express themselves as adults do. So it's about building all of that into your classroom culture, in your classrooms. Yeah. And as Kirsten says, we're very happy to talk to anybody who'd like to give it a go. We're constantly tweaking and changing our approach as well, and things that we're using just to try and adapt and take on board feedback or challenges that other practitioners perhaps put up, or suggestions that they have as well, and to think critically about that and think how that fits with where we want to take this. But we're very open to having those conversations and taking that journey together, I guess.
I mean, be brave. That's fantastic advice for a Monday morning, isn't it? Where's the best place to get you guys? So you're both on LinkedIn. You've got like a joint account, haven't you?
I know. We're not very good at
the whole social media side of things. We're not sure that's allowed, but anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, that was my first reaction. I was like, how did they done that?
Don't really know, Kieran, to be honest. Yeah, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Insta, we're happy for our email addresses.
Come see us.
We are.
If you're in the Highlands, come to me. If you're in Edinburgh, go see Kirsten.
Absolutely. We've got a few blogs out as well, so just a kind of overview of what we were thinking. So I think our most recent one was taken up by Clash and Voices, the Tom Sherrington blog. So that's just come out recently. We're speaking in Edinburgh, if anyone fancies a trip to see us there, at the Research Ed Conference, which is at the beginning of November.
1st of November.
Yeah, I mean, they've missed a trick not calling it Redinburgh.
I know.
We should try and do that.
Have a word with Robin. Is it Robin? Yeah, have a word about. Come on, mate.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So, I mean, if you guys send me the links, I'll make sure they're included in the description. I'm not sure how many people actually look at the description, but I'll include them also in the newsletter on Monday morning as well, so that anyone who is interested can get in touch with you guys. But that's plenty of avenues for which to see your work, and it sounds like a really exciting time to be thinking about journaling, because you guys are clearly both really motivated. So I bet a lot of people have been listening and have caught the bug just from enthusiasm alone. All that's left to do is say thank you very much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you so much for having us and let us talk all things maths journaling.
And everyone at home, until next time, thanks for listening.